In our current form of government, what is your role in holding the city manager accountable?
Well, good evening, and thank you very much to OPAL for this opportunity to talk with residents about really important issues facing our community. I think I agree with a lot of what my colleagues here on the panel have said about the role of the City Council in holding the city manager accountable. One thing I would add is we have really high expectations of our city government and the city manager in meeting those expectations. And in particular, we demand a really customer service approach from our staff members in terms of how they deliver services. And so I think one of the roles of us as aldermen is relaying to the city manager what we're hearing from our residents about whether the services are being provided in a way that is meeting their needs, and what other kinds of issues should the city manager be addressing. As all of us on the city council have regular meetings with the city manager to keep abreast of new developments and to share our concerns that we're hearing from our constituents. And I think that's a very important piece of the way we hold our city manager accountable. But certainly setting goals and measurable outcomes is a really important part of that as well.
I'm going to direct my questions over to the 7th Ward. What is your plan for Canal Shores in Harley Clark given the deficit?
Yes, I agree that these are wonderful community assets, and I see them as positives for economic development and support of the city. We're about to make a decision about what the future of Harley Clark. We've received 4 proposals, and it's the city staff is evaluating those and going to be presenting some information for the city council so we can make a decision and move forward and really begin to bring that wonderful building back to life. So I do think it not only will be a wonderful benefit for the community as a whole, but as Mary indicated, it can be certainly something that brings in outsiders into Evanston as well. With Canal Shores, they have in the last few years had to really strengthen their board of directors and embarked on a really aggressive in a good way, ecological restoration plan to restore the habitat along the canal banks. And that's going to be increasingly attractive for people to come and walk on the paths and bird watch and things like that. They're also looking for ways to take more advantage of the patio and the building there at the pro shop, which can also be a money generator for Canal Shores. They are really pressed to raise the funds they need to maintain that property, and we need to provide as much support as we can to help them do the kinds of work that they can do and really make this a thriving community golf course with accessible rates and a wonderful outreach program for youth in the community.
Thank you. This question is for all the candidates. What sources of information will you use to make decisions?
Well, I agree that we should be, that one really important source of useful information does come from our boards and commissions. A couple of the boards that I rely on a lot are the Evanston Environment Board, which is comes to us with really solid recommendations that we then can implement in an ordinance. I also happen to be the council liaison on the Housing and Homelessness Commission, and I do think there's a lot of expertise there that's very helpful. Another source of really solid information are some of the community organizations that are really specialized in particular issues. And for example, Joining Forces is just an amazing fount of really helpful information and forward thinking that can really be useful to us as we move forward with developing our affordable housing plan for Evanston. And I would also point to Citizens Greener Government, Greener Evanston, which can really come to us with some important ideas to help implement CARP, our climate action plan. And so these are some really existing solid organizations in the community that I think we should be open to listening to and taking their.
Thank you. Our next question. What are your ideas to fill empty storefronts and support local small businesses, including addressing high rents? We will start with Alderperson Revelle.
Well, what's really interesting is as we're meeting here tonight, the Economic Development Committee is having a really interesting meeting where they're talking about several exciting initiatives, one of which I think could really be helpful to smaller businesses. The owner of the building that has the Varsity Theater in it has acquired the property across the alley from that building and is proposing to basically renovate Bookman's Alley and make that space available then to for small retail or any kind of shops, but those would be lower rent spaces for newer businesses to get a good start. There are just a number of really exciting initiatives, I think, that our Economic Development Committee and our Economic Development staff are putting together to help really our business community thrive and rebound after the pandemic. We're fortunate that we do have just a lot going for us in Evanston with the public transit that we have for the downtown, the university and all of its resources, and all those things together make us a very attractive place for businesses to locate. And we need to do everything we can to bring those newer businesses into Evanston and provide support, small business loans and entrepreneurial assistance to our smaller businesses. One thing that we could do that hasn't been mentioned is the city could reach out to our school districts and see, are there ways in which the city can be helpful to the school districts as they try to be supportive to their students who may be needing support on these kinds of issues. So I agree. I'm not the person to have the answers. I'm interested in learning more. I know that we have a Deputy Chief Secluti is the liaison for LGBTQ issues for the police department. And as Jonathan mentioned, I guess we need a new, someone from the city to be identified in that position as well. So we have sort of placeholders for these issues, but the question is, are we really having the kinds of conversations that we need to have? So I think this discussion tonight has really raised the profile of this issue, and we need to be making progress on that in the next 4 years.
Thank you. How will you promote racial equity while mitigating hostility and systemic racism?
Well, I think it's important for us to be having this conversation at the city council level and with city staff, but I think we want to make sure that we're having this conversation with our community as a whole, because we need to make sure that there's, to the extent that there are differences of opinion about whether anything is needed on along these lines, I think if we have the conversation with our residents, we can make sure that they're in concert with us as we try to make progress on equity issues. I think the work that we've seen happen with our reparations subcommittee is really instructive. Dino Robinson and working with the Evanston History Center have put together just an amazing document that shows the racial disparities in our policies and practices in our history and how they have shaped our community today and provide the basis for our reparations program. So we need to make sure that our community as a whole understands our history and why we need to make the kinds of changes that we're poised to be making with our reparations fund.
The next question is, what do you think about defunding the police and how would you bring about police accountability? Alderperson Revelle.
Well, starting with the budget question, I do support our reducing the amount of city funding that goes to the police department. Currently, it's roughly a third of our general operating fund budget, and that we should be able to be a safe community with a smaller police budget. I'm pleased that we are moving forward with an alternative crisis response program. We'll be coming to Human Services next week with a draft of what that program will look like. As I've been working on this subcommittee with Alderman Fleming, I've become even more aware of the really significant need for more mental health services in our community. And I'm glad to think that we'll be meeting those needs somewhat with this alternative response program, but we need to be able to put more city resources, not only into this program going forward, but just into our mental health services in general. I think as we move forward with trying to reduce the police budget, we need to have a conversation, a community conversation about what level of policing the community needs and wants, because it's fine and well to say, well, let's cut the police budget, let's get rid of X number of police officers, but we need to do it in a way in concert with the views of our community as to what everybody needs and wants. And on that particular point, we had an outside organization that did an assessment of our police department a couple of years ago, and in terms of ways to make it more efficient. And they made 6 recommendations, 5 of which we have implemented, but the 6th recommendation we have not yet implemented, and it called for a staffing study.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. I want to thank all the candidates for speaking on the forum, all the viewers for being here. I know that we ran over a little, so I appreciate you being patient with us. Please tune back in tomorrow at 6 for our last forum. Everyone have a great night.